Welcome to the show. Glad to have you with us on this beautiful Tuesday. I'm Sean Stiers. Jesse Stiers is here, and the show hadn't even begun, and I was looking at some of the stuff going on in the YouTube chat, and our old buddies, Tommy and Tom Leonard, going back and forth after yesterday's "he's stealing my identity" whole scenario going on in there. Jesse, how are you today?
I'm a bit sleepy. I won't lie. I had to get up and drop Naomi off at the airport at like 4:30 this morning. So I've been up, got my workout in, went straight to work, and it'll be an early night for me. I'll tell you that. As soon as the show is over.
We've got the Sleep Number bed at home. Free plug there, but we've got the Sleep Number bed. We've had it for a few years now, and it's just whatever. I don't even check the scores most of the time. And then this morning I woke up and I was just exhausted, but I'm thinking, man, seems like I slept pretty well last night. So I check it, and I've got like one of the better sleep scores I've had in forever, but I just felt exhausted after getting up. So I don't know what good any of it is, I guess. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe the time change and all that had something to do with it. You never know. But we're supposed to have storms roll through here tonight. So if you're driving around here within the next couple of hours in this area, stay safe. Stay safe out there, my friends. Did you see Alohi Gilman headed to Kansas City? A little reunion with Drew Tranquil, a couple former Notre Dame guys, as NFL free agency continues today.
Yeah, I did see that. And I forgot about our good friend Drew Tranquil over on the Chiefs, but I was kind of sad to see him leave Baltimore because I thought him and Kyle Hamilton had something working together quite nicely in that secondary. So, left one Notre Dame teammate to go join another Notre Dame teammate. But, if I'm Alohi Gilman and I'm getting pulled between Baltimore and Kansas City, I've got worse things going on in my life because those are two teams that are committed to winning, and they're bringing you in because they want to continue to win. So, good spot for him to be in.
One's got a new coach. One's got a Hall of Fame bound coach and a Hall of Fame bound quarterback and a Hall of Fame bound tight end. They also have a new running back, the Super Bowl MVP, after they signed Kenneth Walker yesterday. And then, I don't know if you saw this move today. I'm sure you did because you see all of this stuff. Isaiah Pacheco going from Kansas City to the Detroit Lions. I thought that was an interesting move after the Lions lost Montgomery. I think, what was that, last week? They made that trade to Houston. So now it's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs and Isaiah Pacheco basically as the number 2 guy behind Gibbs. I thought that was an interesting move for the Lions.
Yeah, we've kind of gone through this running back carousel the last week or so. Joe Mixon, I think, was the first domino to fall. He decided he's not coming back with the Texans. I don't even know if he'll play again in the league with kind of the injuries that he's had going on. And so the Texans get David Montgomery. The Lions get Isaiah Pacheco. And then the Chiefs, who lost their running back, get Kenneth Walker, like you were talking about. And then, there was one more. The Saints getting Travis Etienne. Sorry, That was the last one. But just there's a running back carousel going. I don't think that this draft is really a heavy running back draft outside of maybe the top 2 guys.
Exactly.
And I think that kind of shows some of these teams don't think that they'll be fortunate enough to land some of these running backs.
I think you're right. Not deep in running backs. There is high-end talent at the top, as we all know, with Mr. Love and Mr. Price behind him. But what's after that? I think you're right. I don't think it's very deep. And so a lot of these teams, especially the ones who think that they've got a chance to make some kind of playoff push, are shoring up their backfields right now. And then Geno Smith bouncing around, going back to the New York Jets. Oh,
Did you see that list on social media that when, it started with Geno Smith and there's like a list of 15 quarterbacks and then it's like, and now it's back to Geno Smith.
I mean, I don't know what they're going to do in this draft. I assume they're going to draft a quarterback, but like so much for the talk of Kyler Murray and the Jets when you're going back to Geno. Look, Geno did a solid job when he was with the Seahawks. Obviously, didn't work out with Pete Carroll and the Raiders this year, but going back to the Jets, man, that's I guess at least you're not on the unemployment line. I think that's the best thing you can say about.
Could the Raiders do anything else to signify that they are taking men? Like, I know it wasn't ever going to be doubted, but like this is like tripling down on it. They traded away Geno. They got rid of that contract. They got another draft pick in return. The Raiders have had actually a really good offseason so far in terms of free agency. They've loaded up on draft picks. They obviously have the number 1 overall draft pick. I'm curious if this is the Tom Brady direction. Like, is he the one kind of, pushing, hey, these are the guys we want to target in free agency just because of his overall knowledge of being around the game, traveling for all these games with Fox. And now, they're getting obviously a bunch of compensation in the draft. They're going all in on Mendoza. They signed, I think it's Linderbaum, the center out of Baltimore, one of the top-rated centers in the league. So they also, solidified their offensive line. I for once, it looks like the Raiders are doing something to be a competent organization. I think that's ultimately what I was getting at.
Yeah, they're trying. They're putting their best foot forward. We'll see if the Tom Brady effect actually has an effect on the Raiders and their fortunes going forward. All right. Well, we're just a little bit more than a week away from spring football practice beginning at Notre Dame. Why is do you have like a fan blowing some shades or something? Your lighting keeps going in and out. You go from dark, you go from like
there's too much light with the daylight savings.
That's what it is. Top 5 questions for Notre Dame heading into spring practice. And we have a few that have already been submitted in the YouTube chat. Did you have a very tough time coming up with your 5?
I think after the first couple I did, but after that it wasn't too bad.
I didn't necessarily rank mine, but I think the ones that come to top of mind are like I think I've got a pretty solid 5. Let's start with whatever's at the top of your list, at the top of your mind. What is your number 1 question for Notre Dame going into spring practice?
Yeah, my number 1 question is who's the starting left tackle? And I think once you fill out the starting left tackle, you answer the rest of the questions after that. Like the pieces fall into place amongst the offensive line. It's almost like once you answer left tackle, that's the one position where you're like, all right, I can now answer the rest of the test, basically.
Right. What's funny
but if you don't know the first one, you're going to get the rest of them wrong.
What's funny is I was just looking at my list, and this must be such a pressing question because I wrote it down twice. And I wrote other things under the first time I wrote down offensive line, and then I wrote down a couple things under the other one. I mean, it's going to be a much different looking offensive line that we're going to see in 2026. And I think the biggest thing is what's going to happen on that left side, because based on all the things that we've heard, it sure looks like and sounds like Anthony Knapp, after 2 years starting at left tackle, actually is going to move inside and play left guard. And so the question becomes, is it Will Black at left tackle, or is it Matty Augustine? It feels like that could be kind of one of the bigger competitions that we have. And then does it end up being Gerby Lambert over at right tackle and Sullivan Absher at right guard? What happens with Styles Prescott? Where is he in all this? And then that's not even factoring in Charles Jagasaw, because, again, we'll find out next week when we get a chance to get out there if we see Mr. Jagasaw, but it doesn't sound like we might even get to see him in the spring. But that's, again, kind of a wait and see situation. Blank stare.
So just to clear it up, that question was on both of our lists. So we can cross that one off and go on to the next one.
Well, I don't know if we necessarily want to cross it off. right away. But I did see somebody. I thought somebody had an offensive line. Maybe I didn't hit the star quickly enough. But I mean, that is. I think that's one of the bigger questions is what this line looks like. No matter what, it has the chance to be the most talented Notre Dame offensive line I think we've seen in the last few years. The way everything shakes down when you look at, like who these guys are potentially plugging in, and I think it would make a lot of people happy if Anthony Knapp actually does move inside and play guard. Because I mean, do you agree that like his future, when you look at Anthony Knapp, that his future once he heads off to the NFL is more a guard than a tackle?
Yeah, I definitely think it's more a guard than a tackle, but I have no problem. We've seen this, I feel like, with several. I think you see this across multiple levels of football as you continue to go on between high school and college and NFL. I'd rather see a guy play the more athletic position in preparation for the next level. So, like for example, Drew Tranquil played safety to start and then became a really athletic linebacker, right? And I think that's the same thing I think of when I think of Knapp. Left tackle, you got to have a little bit more of that kind of reach, athleticism, bend, so you can, especially the blind side tackle spot, so you can protect your quarterback. These defensive ends are more elusive. They have better moves. In terms of a guard, I'm not saying that you're not athletic, but you don't have to be as athletic. Your main responsibility in terms of athleticism is just pulling out and getting in front of, a running back as a lead blocker. So I don't mind, and I've never mind that Anthony Knapp, while might end up becoming a guard by the time he's done at Notre Dame or at the next level, while he was still young and had some of that kind of athleticism to him before he beefed up and everything, that he was playing tackle. I just think it provides more experience, provides more, and then say something did happen down the line, Anthony Knapp has the flexibility and the versatility to play any spot amongst the offensive line.
Yes, exactly. There's one in here that I want to get your take on in a minute. Mr. Tommy in the chat says, does one of the backup quarterbacks solidify himself as the clear number 2? And again, I don't know if you ranked your questions, but the backup quarterback is obviously one of the first, one of the things that we're going to get our first kind of glimpse of who CJ Carr's backup is going to be. Is it going to be Blake Hebert, who's already been here a year? Is it going to be Noah Grubbs, who is just stepping on campus? Or does Teddy Gerard, who is, reclassified, was supposed to be a 2027 guy, but he's here in 2026. He's not going to get here until this summer. Does it end up being him? Well, we're not going to get a chance to see Teddy in the spring. So I think one of the bigger curiosities for a lot of people is going to be the reps that Noah Grubbs and or Blake Hebert get and just how good they look. Where did you put this on your list?
This one almost made an honorable mention on my list. It was maybe kind of.
You don't have the backup quarterback high on your list?
It's not even on my list, to be honest with you. It was probably like I didn't necessarily rank these like top priority, least top. I just kind of came up with the five questions in no particular order that I thought were the most concerning, or not concerning, but just you wanted to kind of get ahead of in the spring practice. I think the quarterback 2 situation will take care of itself, and I think it'll be close, but no one's going to be close enough to CJ Carr. And so really what you're kind of doing is you're doing the CJ Carr development for whoever's next, essentially. Like that's what I'm more or less concerned about. I'm not concerned about who's QB2 this season. I'm concerned about who we're establishing to develop, once CJ Carr leaves.
Yeah, but somebody needs to be ready to go if and when he's needed to go, right? Like that feels pretty important to me. Everyone's one snap away, right?
But they're not whoever that is isn't going to be CJ Carr. No matter if it's like
right.
If they had to step in this season, it's a
but he has to
different look to the team
enough to run the offense.
Yeah, but I don't see that happening regardless. I think that the team would take a substantial hit if Carr went down. it would drastically change the outlook on the season.
I get you. Well, it's the quarterback position, though. And so there's going to be a lot of attention on it. So get ready for it.
I just feel like every spring and fall there always is the quarterback stuff, and it always is who's it going to be, or we're trying to know this or that. It's like, can we enjoy one off season where we feel like the QB situation is actually good? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it hasn't been this drama free since maybe Sam Hartman, because with Riley Leonard, it was about his ankle. And then last year it was who was going to be the starter. And then, there's always some sort of talk around the quarterback position. And I feel like this year there really isn't. And we're kind of looking for something to talk about.
See, Justin says, especially if we keep running Carr. Like, I disagree with that. I mean, this guy is not made of glass. He's not fragile. I mean, he's pretty well put together, actually. And, it's not like the kind of running that they have him do is, like high, like he's taking big hits, like I don't have a problem with the way they use it. It's not like he's Riley Leonard out there throwing his body around left and right.
He needs the situation to be able to run.
Yeah. You have to have that in your back pocket. It needs to be part of the
well, you just need a whole defense is true. Like, if you never do it, the defense is never going to commit to it.
Yeah.
And so the few times that you situationally need to do it, it should be there, because you don't run it enough. There's not enough of an expectancy that it's going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. So what is on your list then? If quarterbacks wasn't, backup quarterback wasn't.
Yeah. So we talked about, the left tackle, and then ultimately kind of where the pieces fall. I think obviously Jagasol's health plays a big part of that. We touched on that a little bit. I would say, to kind of switch things over, I think a big thing is how these new defensive coaches mesh together as a new unit. Like, I don't think I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up, because there's new position coaches at every level. There's a new defensive line coach. There's a new linebackers coach. There's a new secondaries coach that is, co-defensive coordinator. So there's a lot of change coming to a defense that, yes, is very loaded and is, maybe considered one of the best all-around defenses in the entire country. But you've got new minds. You've got new perspectives. I guarantee not everyone's going to see everything the same way. And so, like, that's what spring ball is about. How can we come together on our perspective as a defensive, staff? And then kind of diving a little bit more deeper into that, how much of the duties does Chris Ash relinquish at the end of the day? Does he give up? He's supposed to be a secondaries kind of coverage guy. And we saw that's the stuff that they really struggled early on last season. And so is he going to be more dependent on help, from his new secondary coach and defensive coordinator?
I'll tell you this, honestly, I don't think that's something that we're going to get an answer to even once we're not going to get an answer to it.
No, you don't know until the actual games start happening.
Exactly. That's something we're not going to know until
but
then.
Just kind of thinking about my thought process and how it's going to progress.
Right. Internally, they're going to know, and they're going to have to come together. But I mean, we're going to get to see 2 full practices and the blue gold game, and then a couple partial practices. So we're not going to get any kind of inkling of that, because like I remember when Mike Elko came in as defensive coordinator in his first year, and we would go out there, and you remember this was coming off 2016 when the defense was horrible, and they fired Brian Van Gorder in the middle of the year, and so they brought in Elko the next year. We saw nothing in the spring that hinted at this is going to be a legitimately, completely revitalized defense come fall, and it was. But we saw zero hints of that. We saw a lot of like little small detail drills, and that was honestly it, So I don't expect that we're going to get to see anything. Here's Bitten by the Party Animal in the YouTube chat says, do we start to see new young linebackers getting work? And I don't know if like this factors into any of yours, but considering you do have 4 linebackers who are returning, who are going into their 3rd season now, deep in the rotation, how much we see KVA is a question. Kingston Viliamu Asa, obviously, but so you've at least got 3 of those guys who are going to be back this spring. How much do you need to work those guys like during the spring versus how much do you want to see some young guys in the mix getting extra reps, considering you do have so much experience coming back?
Yeah, I think that the spring is a perfect opportunity for some of these younger linebackers to get a lot of reps and honestly be coached up by some of these older guys, including Drake Bowen, Jalen Sneed. And I think, in terms of development of the young guys, I'm just going to kind of state the obvious here. In my opinion, I think you really only need to be focused truly on Madden Framo. That's the guy that I would kind of trying to be figuring out, okay, how much are we going to work him into this rotation? How much more development does he need? Is he going to see a similar snap share as Drake Bowen, as a healthy KVA, Jalen Steed? I guess, kind of what does that breakdown look like overall? But we're getting to a point where the linebacker room is going to see and mass exodus at some point soon because of how old these guys are getting, how long they've been in the system.
Basically, after this season, you're going to have a turned over linebacker room.
Yeah, so I do think that it is critical that this spring, and especially during the season too, that Notre Dame finds ways to get these guys developed, but then also get them some in-game experience as well. Because, we've seen it. They rotate at linebacker just like they do at every other position. So I think that there will be plenty of opportunities to get some of these younger guys in, while also, making sure that the likes of Drake Bowen, Jalen Sneed are getting their share at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a logical approach to take. Okay, what else? What's next? Questions for the spring for Notre Dame going into spring practice next week.
Yeah, I think that my next big one would be, and this is one that I feel like I say all the time, and it's going to continue to be on my list. There is a ton of talent at the wide receiver position, an enormous pool of talent from just, you've got everything. You've got, some of your older guys that have been around for a few years. You've got that middle group, super talented, not as much experience. You've got obviously a transfer portal class that has come in that includes 2 5-star wide receivers from another big time program. And so I just want to see that competition, and I want to see who separates themselves. I know the spring we might not fully see who separates, but I would like to see a lot of these younger guys and the transfers start to develop and showcase kind of what they have. And I'd like someone to emerge from the room and be, the quote unquote alpha or CJ Carr's go-to, because CJ Carr, I don't feel like has a true go-to guy right now. Greathouse is coming off surgeries. I mean, Faison's got probably the most game experience, but he's not a go-to guy. He's like Malachi Fields is a go-to guy, right? Like when I think of those kind of, we need someone to go up and get a ball. We need someone who's a vertical threat. Mm-hmm. Who's that going to be? Who's going to be kind of the next Malachi Fields? And honestly, I think they can do what Malachi Fields did and take it to a next level almost. And so who's going to be that person in the wide receiver room?
No, exactly. And that's on my list as well. Like, is Micah Gilbert, is this going to be a big step up for him? Could Cam Williams, finally kind of emerge? And, the 2 Ohio State guys, Quincy Porter, Mylan Graham, do we see one of those guys jump up? I think that those are all there are 17 receivers by my count in the room this spring. 17 receivers. That is a lot. And it's especially a lot compared to 2 years ago, when they basically had complete turnover with the exception of Jaden Greathouse and Faison, basically. But there's a lot of talent there and a lot of unproven talent, and they've all shown little flashes. So do we see someone really, really step up, some new face step up and emerge and kind of become that guy who you're talking about? I think that is a huge question for them.
Yeah, I mean, let's just be completely honest about it. The running back room, yes, it is going to be talented in its own respects, but it's not Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price anymore. And so CJ Carr is going to be expected to do more naturally. And an offense, I think, is going to have to pass a little bit more. More of the load or the game is going to be on CJ Carr's shoulders in terms of probably having to make more big plays because he doesn't have Jeremiah Love who can just run it 90 yards for a touchdown anymore. So you're going to need dynamic playmakers at the wide receiver position, and the door is wide open, and the talent is there. It's just who's it going to be, and what's that rotation going to look like?
So real quick, I wanted to put this up. Justin asked in the chat, which linebackers graduate after this season? Well, you never know exactly who's in line to graduate. They don't give us, like their academics and where they are and like we know, junior, freshman, sophomore, all those different kind of things. But when you look at the linebacker room in terms of the top four guys, Jalen Sneed, year 5, Jaden Osbury, a junior academically, going into year 4. Kingston Viliamu Asa going into year 3, which means he is draft eligible if he decides to after the season is over. And Drake Bowen going into his senior year. So all 4 of those guys, the 4 most experienced guys, whether they quote unquote graduate, officially or not, you would expect that at least a couple of them will definitely, but they're all potentially eligible to leave if they want, because they're all at least juniors. So, yeah. Michael Johnson asks if we have discussed the backup quarterback. We have discussed the backup quarterback. See, Jesse, people care about the backup quarterback, and you didn't even want to put it on your list.
There's bigger fish to fry. I'm all in on CJ Carr, and if anything goes wrong, you might as well cancel my membership for the season.
I guess here's my question. With Blake Hebert already being here for a year and Grubbs being an early enrollee, and and basically, I was like when I looked at Noah Grubbs and we got a chance to interview some of those guys a couple of weeks ago, like this guy, like no offense, Noah Grubbs, but he's built like a kicker right now. Like this guy needs a little meat on his bones. And so like what Teddy Gerard is going to look like when he shows up in the summer, I don't know. I think the biggest part of this is going to be who grasps it the most between the ears. So wouldn't it be a concern if Blake Hebert isn't the one who's at the top of the pecking order at this point, considering he's been here for a full year at this point and going into a second spring compared to these other 2 guys, as talented as they are?
Yeah, I mean, he's got the leg up. He's been in the system. He knows the play. I mean, he's had the opportunity to study the playbook as much or as little as he wants, film. He's got CJ Carr to talk to. He's got Mike Denbrock. He's got Gino Gaduli. Like he's had a year of the resources. And so it would be a little disconcerting if he isn't the guy that you pencil in at number 2 by the time the season starts. It's just a full year of development like that is huge, especially when the other guys are, as young as they are, kind of just coming into college.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will finish our top 5 questions for Notre Dame heading into spring football. Also have an interview with Notre Dame athletic director. I did it again. Notre Dame athletic trainer, Mike Bean. He has been on Notre Dame's athletic training staff for a long time, and he is the inventor of something you've probably heard of, but you might not actually know that much about. So that is still to come, but we'll finish our top 5 list after we take this quick break. Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com. I'm Sean Stiers, joined by Jesse Stiers, rolling through this first hour. Don't forget, of course, Rapid Fire, hour number 2 of the show. I've got an interview coming up with Mike Bean from the training staff at Notre Dame. He's been at Notre Dame for a long time, and he invented something a few years back that is in wide use today, both across college athletics and for individuals as well. So you hear that coming up in a minute. I've got 2 on my list that we haven't got to yet. Defensive tackle, running back. Either one of you, those or both of those on your list that we haven't touched yet.
Yeah, it sounds like our lists are pretty similar. Yours might have the non-factor quarterback situation. Mine doesn't.
Yes, the non-factor quarterback situation that people want to know about was on my list.
Hey, just because people want to know about it doesn't mean it's a concern for the spring season.
Well, nobody said it was a concern. There's a difference between concern and question. It's a question. It's a question going into spring. Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback?
The bottom of your priority questions.
Okay. So I just told you what my last 2 are. Is there anything that you want to hit that's not one of those last 2?
I was just going to say running backs were also on mine. Okay. You're obviously restarting the room a little bit. I want to see now what Jaywan Sider is all about as a running back coach. We can actually start to evaluate him. I think that starts with the spring, working out different running backs, seeing how they mesh
when it's an largely unproven group compared to having Love and Price in the back.
Right. And so we're gonna see Jaywan Sider, for lack of better terms, actually do his job this season. Like last year you could cruise control it. Like what could really go wrong when you have Love and Jadarian Price? Like let's just be honest about it.
Nothing.
And so
Nothing
I just want to see how they build that. Is it a 2-man rotation, 3-man rotation? Are we going to be surprised maybe by someone that is or isn't in that rotation? So there's a lot to be answered, and I think spring will actually tell us a lot about who they like in certain groupings, personnels, all of that stuff. And so I think it's a big question. Obviously, your 2 running backs are about to be drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. What are you doing to make sure that you're not going to replace them, but can you find some similar production?
Yeah, I mean, Aeneas Williams has been good in spots. What's he going to be like as the man, and what's the pecking order going to be behind him? What exactly does that look like? Sounds like Kedron Young could be in line for a strong spring. I guess we'll find out. Probably at some point within the next week, we need to do our spring breakout predictions that we've become accustomed to doing. And I also just realized, Jesse, that I didn't mention this, and this was on my list as well. Christian Gray moving to the nickel / slot, and how the other guys do at field corner. And I think
has that been confirmed?
Yes. When we talked to Aaron Henry, he said that Christian Gray is one of the guys who are gonna see some time at nickel, at least this spring. So, yeah.
I think so. That would be my last question. Would be that / I'm gonna quote my good friend Jerry Jones here. Who's gonna be the war daddy at defensive ends? Who's gonna rack up all the production this season? It's very similar to the wide receiver room in my opinion. A lot of talent, a lot of depth, but I think that there's someone on this roster who can maybe get you 10 sacks this season, and I want to know who that's going to be by the time. Maybe we don't know by the end of spring, but we're going to see, how everyone's kind of progressed. Like the defensive end spot is a huge spot in this defense this season because they got to get pressure. That's where, they struggled early on last season was the secondary and defensive line not being in sync. There'd be times that the secondary would cover, no pressure. Sometimes they'd get pressure and the secondary couldn't cover. So I want to see who's going to be that guy pressing for 10 sacks.
No, I think that's good. My question is more about the interior and specific to Armel Mukum and Sean Sevillano, because these are 2 of the bigger bodies that they've got. Mukum is 302 pounds and Sevillano is 325 pounds. And Mukum, remember, not only did he enter the transfer portal, he was apparently committed to Northwestern, and then he decided he wanted to come back. So these are both guys who have been around campus for a few years. Are we going to see a move from one of these guys to become a legitimate piece of the rotation and not just a depth piece who's getting in more in the fourth quarter and playing special teams and that kind of stuff, because I think that we saw some improvement from Mukum late in the season last year. So what are we going to see from these guys now? Do they step up? And, like Tom is saying, Partridge is the coach of the year. Well, he's the new defensive line coach. What does he get out of these guys? Whether they're the ends that you're talking about or the interior guys like this. But, like the other thing with the corner is like DJ McKinney, who they got from Colorado, he's not here this spring. So that means other opportunities and a chance to, to move guys around and see what they can do in the spring until DJ McKinney, who has all that experience, gets here in the summer and in fall training camp.
He's just more of a true corner. He's got the length. He's got the size.
Right. And
Christian
again,
Gray's always been a little undersized, which he's performed well. I know a lot of people like to bag on Christian Gray, just like they like to bag on Joe Rudolph. Like there was a comment in the talking about if we had the same O-line issues, there's going to be issues at quarterback. What O-line issues were there last year? Like what are we talking? It's like we're fabricating issues almost. Like I don't know. I digress.
Will Foran in the chat says, does any other third team running back in the country have 14 touchdowns like Aeneas Williams? Probably not. But I guess my point about, again, we all feel like he's going to jump in and do very well. And obviously I think they feel like that as well. But I would just say there is a difference doing it in the first, second, and third quarters as opposed to getting in the fourth quarter when games are lopsided and you're playing in blowout situations, like Stanford, for example. He got in a little bit earlier against Stanford, but look at how things were going up until that point. So that would be my only point with that. And that's not a knock on him by any means. Yeah, Joe says 14 came in garbage time. Again, I don't like to use the word garbage time, but we get the drift.
Like we're getting out the grading rubric, and this season is going to hit Aeneas Williams because he's going to have full-on responsibilities.
Yep.
We've seen some of those flashes of talent. He's been in the system for 2 years now. Like this is a big year, in terms of judgment time for someone like Aeneas Williams. Can he handle it? Can he still have some production?
He did have a high leverage touchdown against Penn State in the semifinals and a big time catch against Penn State as well. But again, different running back coach and the rotation looked a little bit different back then. But I think we expect that. I think the bigger question is, again, what comes behind him. I think, is the bigger thing that'll need to start to be answered this spring. Okay, Jesse is going to jump out for a little bit. And in the meantime, I promised an interview, and it is with Mike Bean from Notre Dame. And I will just, I won't offer any further explanation because we're going to do it in the interview. I talked to him earlier today. He's an inventor, an entrepreneur of something that you've probably heard of, and you might not even know it. And so I'll just let him take it away. Mike Bean is a longtime athletic trainer at Notre Dame, and he's an entrepreneur as well. He's with us on the show today. Mike, how's it going?
Going well. We're just getting a little reprieve here before spring football starts, so a little downtime to do a little work on my side job, which is with TayCo Ankle Brace. So taking advantage of some of the time to spend some time with that project.
Awesome. Well, I said longtime athletic trainer. How long have you been at Notre Dame now? I've known you for probably around 25 years or something like that at this point.
Yeah, it'll be 36 years come July 1st. So, and man, I tell you, it has gone by so fast, but I guess it's true what they say. It's, time flies when you're having fun, and been really blessed and fortunate to be able to do what I love to do at a place I love to do it with people I love to be around for that long. And it's been a real blessing.
Well, I know that you've worked with baseball in the past. You've worked with, football for a long time as well, and kind of some crossover there. What was the first sport that you worked with when you got there to Notre Dame? Because 36 years, that puts you at 1990, basically.
Yep. My first year at Notre Dame was actually just a 10-month internship. And back then we had a staff about a third of the size of what we have now. So I took care of women's soccer. I helped with ice hockey. I took care of men's and women's track. I helped with men's lacrosse. Fortunately, I don't have nearly that full of a plate anymore.
It has narrowed down over time. Did you get to work with Lou Holtz very much? I mean, obviously Lou has been in the news, with his unfortunate passing. Did you get much crossover with him then back in those early years in the 1990s?
Yeah, I worked one full year with him as a primary member of his staff, and then a couple years before that, where I was kind of a peripheral guy, helped out with a lot of football, but I had some other responsibilities. So really, kind of about 3 years, one full year. So good to get a chance to spend some time with him and his last couple of years here at Notre Dame.
What were those experiences like, getting to work with someone who obviously is a Notre Dame legend?
It's you look back on it now, and it did at the time. It didn't seem like anything out of the ordinary, but he was a special guy, and obviously did a lot for Notre Dame. So it was special.
Well, you mentioned the TayCo Brace, and that's why we had you on today. You are at least a co-inventor of something known as the TayCo Brace, and I think that people who follow Notre Dame football closely enough have probably at least maybe heard of the TayCo Brace over the last several years. So how would you kind of describe just what the TayCo Brace is, I guess, first of all?
Well, I'm the sole inventor, but beyond that, then there's been a lot of people who have helped get it to where it has been. But it was kind of my idea, conceptually back probably about 17 years ago. Just was working football, and I just thought we needed a better option for our ankle injuries that we're seeing. And there's ankle braces have been around since the 70s. Both soft and semi-rigid and rigid, and the one thing that they all had in common, and they all served their purpose to an extent, but the one thing they all had in common was that they had to go on the ankle, and then you had to wedge that foot and ankle into your shoe. And especially if you're doing anything, with a semi-rigid or a rigid brace, it really compromised the fit of the shoe. And, that led to some other foot problems and issues, blisters, those kind of things. And I just thought, there's got to be a better solution to provide something that's really supportive, but yet functional. And it'll be an easy fit. It'll be, less friction, causing problems on the ankle. And that was really kind of the starting point. And, luckily I had a good relationship with Bernie Veldman over at his orthotist shop here in town. And I took a couple ideas to him and his staff, and we started with a mock-up and did a couple demos. And next thing you know, here we are.
Was there like a specific moment, instance, like injury that prompted you to think about this, or was just this kind of something over time that just, I guess, started kicking around in your head and prompted all of this?
There really wasn't one specific single instance. It was just kind of a conceptual problem that we had with, finding something that was really beneficial. And so that's kind of where it started. And then, we kind of come up with a prototype, and we used it mainly at practice to start with. And then we kind of the guys started liking it and wearing it. And we were able to kind of get it into a game situation. And, like I said, it just kind of kept steamrolling from there. And the success of it at Notre Dame was becoming pretty prevalent, and to the point where some guys would even come in and ask for it by name someday. Say, my ankle's pretty sore today, and I sprained it a little bit yesterday. Can I wear a TayCo today? So, those were the little stimuluses that kind of got me thinking this might be something beneficial for more than just what we're doing here at Notre Dame.
So you mentioned the prototype. So like you're kind of in the lab and you're talking to your friend, like how does a prototype for something like this come together?
Well, it's back then it was a little bit more simplistic. We took
I bet.
we casted some ankles right over a shoe to give us kind of a model, and took some measurements, both anatomically and then in accordance with the shoe size, and then we just started playing with some material, and they would create a kind of a mold, and then we would wrap the material around it. In fact, for a lot of years, that's how we made every brace. Was they would make an impression from the cast, and then they would just by hand put these pieces together, which it's a polypropylene material that you'd get warm, and then you'd cut it and form it to the ankle mold, and that's where it came from. So, now it's all laser printed and those kind of things for mock-ups and for prototypes. But back then it was kind of old school, and but that's where it started.
Well, I mean, obviously you've got sort of the good, quote unquote laboratory, because you get to work with student athletes all the time, whether they're football or baseball or whatever, different sports that you've worked with. So when you've got something like this, Mike, so it's like back then, I'm sure it wasn't called the TayCo Brace. It was like this brace that I've kind of been working on or experience, like what's that like when you first, sort of pitch it to, whether it's a coach or an athlete? It's like, well, here's something I've been working on. What do you think about this? What's that like when you're first pitching it and trying to get guys or gals or whoever to use it for the first time?
Yeah, well, athletic trainers are famous for being able to kind of fabricate and make some special braces, be able to function. And this was just kind of an extension of that mindset. And but we had some prototypes, and in practice I said, listen, if just the tape in the ankle and this what we've done so far isn't working, let's try this. If it doesn't work, we'll take it off, we'll do it something else, but at least give it a shot. And fortunately we've got a lot of great kids here who are open to doing whatever it takes to get back on the field. And that was kind of the starting point. And kind of once you get a few guys that have worn it and like it, and then the next guy that comes along and needs it, you can say, well, go talk to so-and-so, he wore one, and the positive feedback just kind of grows from there. So from a coaching standpoint, they're not too interested in it. They just all
whatever works, right?
work. But convincing the athlete, and obviously running it by our physicians and making sure that they're comfortable with what the product's abilities are and what its limitations are and those kind of things. We don't want to obviously put a player in a more compromising situation, but and we found through time that that really wasn't the case whatsoever. It was really a good fit.
Was there ever kind of a light bulb or like aha moment, like, hey man, we've really got something here?
Yeah, I think probably the one watershed moment that really sticks out in my mind was, I don't recall the year, it was probably back in 2013, 14, 15, somewhere in there. We had an offensive lineman who sprained an ankle in a home game, and he came off, and we looked at it, and the docs evaluated it, and it wasn't terribly bad, and if we can support it enough, and you're not in too much discomfort and compromising your movement, then you can try and play. And so we took it apart, retaped him, put the shoe back on, spatted him, which is putting tape over the shoe. And he goes out and tried one play and came back off. He says, I can't post. I can't push off with it enough. And he says, I really want to try and get back out there. And I said, well, we've used this in practice. Let's try it in a game if you're willing to. And he says, yeah, I'll do anything. So took the tape off the shoe, put the brace on, and normally that's applied with spatting it on, taping it on, and we did that. And he moved around on the sideline. We ran him through a few things on the sideline. He says, that feels better. And so the next series, he goes back out there. We go on a long drive. I don't remember what the outcome was, but he was out there for several plays. And he comes back off the field, and I said, hey, how you doing? He goes, man, this thing's great. He says, I can post, I can drive off now, and I got strength in it. It's much better. So that was kind of the one really watershed moment that I said, this might really be something that could benefit a lot of people.
So Do you think, is it pretty common now for guys to be wearing the TayCo like during, not just in practice during recovery, but during a game itself as well?
Yeah. So it's pretty common for us. It's kind of rare that we don't have one or two guys wearing one, pretty much every game. And we're starting to see it across the country with with athletes from other schools that are wearing it. Quite frequently we see it on the other sidelines now too, which is kind of nice. So, but it's really evolved a lot from just a functional game brace. It's really evolved into more of a recovery as well as a recovery appliance. So we have guys that will sprain their ankle in a game. We'll put the brace on them. They'll finish the game. And then after the game, we put the brace back on them with some Velcro straps, and they wear that home as a recovery appliance. So it's taken the place of those cumbersome walking boots and those kind of things. So,
well, and there's a website now, TayCoBrace.com, TAYCO Brace.com, and it looks like there are multiple designs of this. Is that right?
Yeah, like I said, earlier that I never envisioned TayCo would ever get to the point where it is now, but and athletics is obviously still a big part of our company, but we have evolved into so much more, and a lot of that credit goes to our Fred Furlick. Dr. Furlick was a longtime orthopedic surgeon here in South Bend, and he really had the vision and the ambition and the desire to expand the use of TayCo, and it's just grown exponentially from there. So we've got a couple different versions. We're servicing the military, and we've got another TayCo brace. It's a little bit more for the average person. So, it's really rewarding to see that we're able to improve the quality of life or help people with ankle injuries from every walk of life, from a senior citizen to an average person to the military to professional athletes to even people with some neurological neuropathies or some sort of a condition that they have some nerve issues in their ankles. So, and it is, like I said, it evolved into something much more than I ever envisioned.
How different do you think, again, like going back to those first prototypes, how different is like the TayCo brace that's being sold, whether it's on the website or you, like how different is that compared to those first prototypes that you guys put together back in the day?
Actually it's pretty close. The first one was a little bit bulkier, a little bit, and we were able to kind of streamline it over time. We went through a couple other renditions that we kind of tried for a while. And actually the current one that we have right now that we're using as an athletic brace is kind of evolved all the way back into what almost our original concept was back 17 years ago. So we've kind of come full circle with the athletic brace, but like I said, we've got a couple other races that are a little bit just different for different walks of life. The military and the one that's kind of for everyday people has got some range of motion limits that can serve other people who may need a little bit more support, a little bit more restricted motion early in their recovery.
Well, and there was Holly Rowe on ESPN during, I think it was one of the playoff games, maybe, or during a football game. She held it up and she was talking about it. She, kind of turned it like, did your cell phone blow up after that? Was there a lot of interest in the TayCo brace after it went, national on TV there?
It did. It was kind of a nice surprise. It actually happened even the year before. Holly had seen it someplace and she did a little pitch for it the year before, and then again this year. I'm not sure how she became so aware of it or so interested in it, but I sure kind of like the idea that she's promoting it like she has been for us. So, but yeah, there was a lot of text messaging after that. So,
Mike, is there like one thing that you would want people to know, I guess, about the TayCo brace? Is there any message that that you would have for people? Because like you've talked about, it's not just for athletes, but for people in, all different sort of walks of life in different recovery and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, the brace is unique in the fact that it's, can serve a lot of different people, and it's a nice alternative to, like the big cumbersome walking boots that, so many people wear. And there's still a place for those boots. I'm not saying that, but for, ankle injuries, it's all about returning to function. And with this brace, you're allowed to return to function a little much easier and a much usually quicker time frame. Driving a car, you can drive a car with a TayCo. You can't drive a car with a walking boot. And so there's a lot of options that kind of make it just a little bit unique. And like I said, it can serve a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And it's really been rewarding to see that. And the name TayCo, I need to put the plug in for that because it's named after my family, my daughter Taylor, and my wife Colleen, and my daughter Courtney. So that's where the TAY and the COs come from. So
I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually meant to ask you where this name came from, and that's where it was nothing scientific. It was just kind of broken down family related.
Yeah, and I was pretty set on that name even back when it was really, really early in the inception. I said, if this ever takes off, I'm just going to call it that. And I don't know how it kind of stuck, but it sure did, and it's been good ever since.
That's very cool. Did anyone ever get you to try to get you to change the name or anything like that?
No, it's no one's ever really just made that approach. It's been it's pretty consistent, and like I said, it's kind of getting a nice notoriety across the country now. So
it's the TayCo Brace, TAYCO, TayCo Brace.com is the website that you can visit, and for all of those needs for your ankle, if ankle support, want to get around a little bit better. My wife had surgery a couple of years ago on her ankle, and she's going to have a follow-up this year. I told her, I said, there's this thing called the TayCo Brace out there, and she didn't want to hear any of it. So I'm going to have a talk with her and her doctor after she has that recovery in about a month or so when she does it again. So
yeah, well, that's it's a common theme we run up against because it's new, it's unique, and doctors have been using something else for a long time, and it's a challenge to get people to really to buy into what we can provide, and but it's been going, and it's going pretty smoothly and not quickly as we'd like it to be sometimes, but transitions is working, so people are really liking it.
All right, he's Mike Bean. He's been with Notre Dame for 36 years, and I guarantee if you've watched a Notre Dame football game in recent years that whether you've known it or not, you've seen Mike Bean out there, maybe either on the sideline or strolled out there on the field from time to time to check on one of those Notre Dame football players when unfortunately something has gone wrong out there on the field. But the inventor of the TayCo Brace, and again, it's TayCo Brace.com, TayCoBrace.com. Enjoyed it, Mike. So a lot of great information. Thanks for doing this.
Don, I appreciate you taking the time to visit. Like I said, I know this is a little off the norm for what you'd like to visit about on your show, but it's kind of athletic related, and I appreciate you taking the time to visit and enjoyed doing it.
Absolutely. All right, that's Mike Bean, longtime Notre Dame athletic trainer. He used to work with baseball, works with football still right now, a little entrepreneurial. We will take a timeout. When we come back, it's hour 2 of Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat, and that means Rapid Fire is on the way, coming up next in the 6 o'clock hour. It is hour number 2 of the show, along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. 6 o'clock hour can mean only one thing. Jesse, rapid fire time. Are you ready for it, sir?
I am ready for it. I've been looking forward to it all day now that you've actually asked.
Oh, well, I'm glad that I could help you out then. So we talked a little bit about this yesterday at the start of the show. I wanted to kind of circle back. NFL free agency, of course, starting yesterday, and the Saints and Chiefs, who pick 8th and 9th in the NFL draft, have both been connected to interest in drafting Jeremiah Love. Now, they both signed veteran running backs at the start of free agency yesterday. So what do you think all this means in terms of those two teams specifically and their potential interest in Jeremiah Love?
Yeah, I don't think that it takes away from the interest in Jeremiah Love. I just think they're being realistic at the end of the day and realizing that Jeremiah Love isn't going to be available at picks 8 and 9 by the time it's all said and done. So, these teams can't bank on a roll of the dice and hope to get a running back in the draft, aka or a la Jeremiah Love, probably the best player in the entire draft. And so you have to have a contingency plan of, we likely know that this isn't going to happen. And so, that's why you see the Chiefs get the Super Bowl MVP in Kenneth Walker III. And you saw the Saints go out and get Travis Etienne. I also saw Todd McShay tweet something out today, probably news that I gave him, but I'll just kind of reiterate it here a little bit.
Oh, you're out there breaking news now too, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying this early on. Todd must have heard the show.
Oh, okay.
Last week or
even
even yesterday. So, he says it's important to know every GM in the league is taking Jeremiah Love on a rookie deal over Kenneth Walker or Etienne on a veteran deal. It's not a knock on them. It's just financial sense. Mickey Loomis and Brett Veach, those are the GMs, are well aware that Love isn't making it to them by that point in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly it, because he was already highly regarded going into the combine a couple of weeks ago, and his stock actually went up. Like we were sitting here saying, man, you're running, you're doing all this.
And that was the point of him at the combine.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing all this testing. We felt like maybe you weren't as much as Vince and I, like his stock could only get hurt, but he actually improved it because he tested off the charts. He interviewed off the charts as well. So he goes from, is this guy a top 10 pick, to, is he so good that you would even take him in the top 5, because he's unanimously, like one of the top 2 actual best players in the draft. But as we all know, based on what position you are, just because you're one of the best players doesn't mean that that's necessarily where you go in the draft. So now the question is, do you take a running back that high? Because as we've seen in so many drafts in recent history, the value of the running back, the position of the running back has been devalued. But Love is obviously a multi-threat weapon with elite speed, who teams can use, like the Lions have with Jahmyr Gibbs. And, full admission, I thought the Lions were reaching a bit to even take Jahmyr Gibbs at number 12 a few years back. But look, the Colts took Anthony Richardson 8 spots ahead of him. And look where that, look how that turned out, taking a quarterback that high, who was much more of a project, So the Cardinals pick at 3, the Titans pick at 4, the Giants pick at 5. Any of them could likely pick Love, and I would expect that one of those is going to, like the Titans right now have become the trendy projection to take him. I also wouldn't be surprised, though, if somehow Jeremiah Love does not go in that top 5. I wouldn't be shocked if either the Chiefs or the Saints end up taking him at 8 or 9 if he would actually fall to them and he was available to either one of them, because it's the NFL and you've got to have 2 running backs in the NFL. Just look at Walker and Charbonnet last year in Seattle, before Charbonnet was obviously hurt, and Gibbs and Montgomery in Detroit, and on and on and on. You've got to have 2 backs. So I just think that the Chiefs and the Saints are looking at this realistically, and they don't want to be left holding the bag. And they're like, we've got to have somebody, and it doesn't look like Love is going to get to us right now. I don't think it has anything to do with their lack of interest in Love. I just don't think that they realistically think that he's going to get to him at 8 or 9.
Yeah, I don't think that he's going to get there. I think that the potential of Cam Ward and Jeremiah Love, two young guys who could be running an offense together for a long time, is very tantalizing for an organization like the Tennessee Titans. I will agree on what you say, though. I think that a lot of these top 5, top 10 teams have issues that run deeper than the top offensive player in the draft, but it's so hard to say no
How do you turn
as a
down that
GM.
talent?
Like
Yeah.
you want the home run hitter. He's going to sell tickets. People are going to come out and want to see, what he can showcase, especially if he starts hurdling guys, spinning around guys, like some of that same stuff we saw, during his time at Notre Dame. So it's like to me, it's like you go to buy a new car and it's like, am I going to make the financially responsible decision here and get a nice little sedan? Or am I going to go with the 2-door drop top Lamborghini because I can? And so like that's what it is like these teams have a lot of these teams need to solidify on the defensive side of the ball, offensive line side of the ball. There's premier edge rushers. There's a lot of depth at premier positions and a lot of holes to fill for these teams that running back isn't necessarily the best fix. And so can that cause him to slide a little bit like you were talking about?
I mean, case in point, the Cincinnati Bengals a few years back, you draft Joe Burrow and you really needed to address your offensive line. But Joe Burrow wanted to take Jamar Chase. They were teammates at LSU, and they went with Jamar Chase. And in the short term, it worked out in spite of one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL and your quarterback taking a beating. They got to the Super Bowl, and they lost a close Super Bowl. But look at where they are 5 years later. You still need an offensive line. You've got Jamar Chase, but can Joe Burrow stay upright long enough to actually be able to complete passes to Jamar Chase? And that's the question that a lot of teams have to answer. Jamar Chase, just as a player, has obviously been awesome. He's through the roof, one of the best receivers in the NFL, if not the best receiver in the NFL. But they still have a horrible offensive line, and those are the kind of questions that these teams have to answer. Do you go with the superstar home run threat, as great as he is and as flashy as he is? And honestly, it'll sell more tickets to have a guy like Jeremiah Love. Or do you address probably a bigger need with offensive line or defensive end or whatever it happens to be? That's the questions that they've got to ask.
Can we talk about worst case scenario? And
Sure.
That's the Cleveland Browns drafting him 6th.
Oh, man. Like, would you wish that on anyone at this point?
No.
Cleveland Browns drafting him?
The Jets and the Browns, I would not wish that upon anyone. But the Browns have made some.
Wouldn't you include the Raiders in that mix? Well, Jets, Browns, Raiders, like those three?
I would until I just like what we were talking about at the beginning of the show. Like someone else is calling the shots within the last 30 days because all of a sudden the Raiders look like they know what they're doing in terms of free agents, draft compensation. It's like, all right, we've fully bought in on this rebuild and we're going to acquire as much, capital as possible. I see more signs of intelligence and life out of the Raiders than I do the Browns and the Jets currently. But, it's just what worries me, or I guess the reason why I'm bringing this up is the Browns have signed a couple offensive linemen in the last couple days, and I thought for sure that's what they were going to do with the number 6 pick is take one of the best offensive linemen because that's what they need for Deshaun or Shador, whoever ends up playing quarterback. But they also need offensive talent as well. And so, I think Carnell Tate and both Jeremiah Love could be there at 6, and it's who do you take at that point if you're Cleveland?
Yeah, and this guy Joe in the chat was asking about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and the last I heard about him, the report that came out a couple of weeks ago on Owusu-Koramoah is that he might never play again. I mean, have you heard anything differently since then?
Yeah, I heard it was reported on prematurely, and then I saw JOK kind of like basically said, who is your sources? Obviously him being the ultimate source. So it sounds like I know that has been something that's been, discussed, and obviously his medicals coming out of Notre Dame were a big red flag. And he hasn't been able to stay healthy in the NFL, but I'm not giving up on him yet. But it might be the most responsible decision for him because I feel like we're getting towards that potential like everlasting lifelong damage to the body. And it's like, especially when you're talking about the head and neck area,
Right.
I don't know.
Yep. All right. We shall see. We shall see. We've got basically a month and a half that we still get to wind up on draft talk. So that is in addition to spring football practice. And if I'm not mistaken, the draft and the blue gold game are the same weekend this year. There are
I don't like when those things happen.
I don't like when those two worlds collide at all, but I think that's what we're going to have this year. But for Notre Dame, by Saturday, we can safely say that I think that 2 or 3 of their biggest stars are going to be off the board. So, well, NBC has released its Sunday night baseball schedule for this season. And in case you didn't know, the Sunday night baseball package is moving from ESPN to NBC this year. Well, NBC is going to broadcast the Atlanta Braves and Philadelphia Phillies game at 3:00 Eastern time on September 6th. That is also the same day as Notre Dame's Shamrock Series game against Wisconsin at Lambeau Field. Scale of 1 to 10, what's your confidence we get a primetime kickoff for the Irish and Badgers that day?
Yeah, I think with this announcement is definitely a 10 out of 10, with obviously NBC doing the football game and now having the rights to the baseball game that day. 3 p.m. Eastern, typical baseball game, 3 to 4 hours. I would expect the Notre Dame game to kick off right around 7:30. Telecast to start at 7:30. Kickoffs to probably come actually somewhere around 7:45.
Right.
It's Notre Dame in Wisconsin. You're inside an NFL stadium. It's NBC. You're rolling, straight from the Braves and Phillies into this football game. I mean, it's already kind of lined up. I want to say this too before I forget.
Okay.
The whole baseball packaging thing this year has me so confused because I have MLB TV, but then it was saying I need ESPN as well. But then it was like, well, if you've been a longtime member of MLB TV, you don't need the ESPN, and now NBC has games. So long story short, I'm already kind of fed up with this new baseball package.
And the season hasn't even started yet. You're already.
No, and it's my favorite thing every season. I watch just about every Cubs game that I can. And so having the MLB pass is something I cherish. One of my good friends and I split it. So we're both able to watch and obviously rant about the Cubs. But I'm excited for it because I think I really enjoyed the NBC basketball products, and I think that baseball could be something that they do well on top of it. So I don't know. That's my rant. I'm just streaming with baseball is already stressing me out.
We'll address more of that in a minute. You went completely off on a tangent that I wasn't expecting you to go to, and we will definitely come back to that. Stymie says baseball is the lead-in. Interesting play. Well, this is Labor Day weekend that we're talking about. September 6th is Labor Day weekend. So that is
right
a
on
Sunday
the
night
heat of playoff baseball.
It's going to be another Sunday night kickoff for Notre Dame because it's Labor Day. And of course, the next day is Monday. But I mean, so baseball essentially has to be the lead in, one, because it's Sunday / Labor Day weekend. And 2, because NBC is now the home of Sunday night baseball, and they are actually potentially, we don't know for sure, but they're potentially accommodating Notre Dame by doing this because of the fact that, so like to answer the question, I think it's a 9 out of 10. If NBC has Sunday night baseball and on this particular Sunday that Notre Dame also happens to be playing against Wisconsin, and this is considered a Notre Dame home game because it is the Shamrock Series game, and they're going to be playing a baseball game at 3:00 in the afternoon, I would say I'm just going to bump this up to a 10. That's when Notre Dame and Wisconsin are going to be playing. If they're, because again, if NBC has the Sunday night package, night being the key word, but on this particular day, they're playing in the afternoon and all these other games are night games. Like what else is it going to be? It has to be a night game. We've pretty much expected it. Because like when you look at Notre Dame's schedule of the rest of the home games, you've got Rice, You've got Michigan State. You've got Stanford. You've got Miami. That'll be a night game in early November. You've got Boston College, and you've got SMU. What else are you going to be in primetime? At least 2 games are going to be in primetime. So I say it's 10 out of 10. Notre Dame, Wisconsin at Lambeau. You're looking at a Sunday night game. Boom. Lock it up.
Lock it up.
We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll go ahead and talk about the other side of this. Who's going to be calling those games on NBC? And we'll see what Jesse thinks about that. Those and other topics, Notre Dame and elsewhere related, coming up. Rapid fire, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue rapid fire on Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. I'm Sean Stiers, along with Jesse Stiers. We were talking NBC. We were talking Sunday Night Football, kickoff the Shamrock Series game, Notre Dame, Wisconsin. Tommy asks if we personally like Notre Dame's Sunday Night season openers. No, I don't.
Can I guess why you don't?
Because I'm old and I don't like night games.
Yes. And it messes up every day past Saturday, just messes up your Monday by a day, your Tuesday by a day.
Yeah, I mean, they're already playing on Sunday. It's like everything is the whole thing is going to be screwed up.
I can't wait to shake the boat.
An afternoon game.
I like when they play separate. I don't when it's on, like, don't get me wrong, I got nothing against Saturday games, but when they do these, I guess, kind of like standalone marquee games, one, it puts them on the national stage, so everyone's watching.
I don't mind that, I guess. Yeah.
Two, what I don't mind is I don't got to stress about everything else going on in college football that day. I am tunnel vision, Notre Dame. That's all I'm worried about. I wake up, it's Notre Dame football, and that's it. So I don't care about all the other big matchups going on. And then potentially too, some upsets have already happened, you would hope. So maybe it takes the spotlight off of what does or doesn't happen. So I don't mind it. It's just another day to play football. As long as it's not Friday, then I'd have an issue. But Sunday's okay with me.
Yeah, I get it. It's Labor Day weekend. That's kind of college football's last chance to do their own thing before the NFL starts in that Labor Day weekend. And it does make it standalone. Like last year when they went to Miami, it was a standalone game, obviously on a different network, but it was still standalone. So that is kind of cool to kind of get that center stage, to yourself and do it that way. Stymie says he likes the baseball lead in because NBC typically has Euro kickball league running long and making me anxious for the start of my event. Yeah, like over the years, there's been NASCAR and soccer as lead-ins early in the year. And I'm not big on either one of those. I know you're more on soccer than NASCAR. But Joe says your problem, Jesse, is the Cubs is your team at the end of the day. That's your biggest problem.
Where did that come from? What were we talking about?
You were talking about the Cubs and following the Cubs and watching the Cubs as much as you can.
Yes. They're winning the division this year, so
okay.
Not really worried about it.
All right, we shall see. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Jason Benetti has left Fox to become NBC's Sunday night Major League Baseball play-by-play announcer.
I guess I'm going to go shocking because he's kind of made multiple jumps, and it feels like he, at the end of the day, kind of isn't staying loyal. Like, I understand it. He's kind of chasing, what seems to be the next best gig, which I think is a tribute to, his skill set, because if you're constantly being chased or desired, you're obviously doing something good. So it seems like he is kind of elevating himself into the role of being the voice of MLB baseball.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's going to get to be the lead guy on NBC. NBC is getting baseball, and Jason Benetti is going to get to be the guy. Like, he is, like, they're going to have the one primetime
He's
game.
Kind of become what, like the
it.
Mike Tirico of baseball, because of Tirico getting to do the NBA this season.
Yeah. And he can do basketball as well. So I'm sure he'll have a chance to do basketball. Here's the interest. So, just from that aspect alone, because this is a guy who was doing local TV. He's a local Chicago guy. He was doing the White Sox for a while. And he wanted to be able to do more national stuff, and he was getting pushback from the White Sox. And so he said, well, I'm leaving. And so he left the White Sox. He's been with the Tigers for the last couple of years, done a great job there. And like, as the way things have worked out, it couldn't have worked out better for Jason Benetti, because the Tigers have actually turned into a playoff team and the White Sox turned back into the White Sox. So, like, that's worked out great. And now Benetti is spinning that into being the lead play-by-play voice for NBC in their Sunday night broadcasts as they take over the Sunday night broadcast from ESPN. But here's where I think it gets interesting, Jesse.
A little twist.
Well, no, not even what you see on we're going to get to that in a second. I do wonder, because as of right, like Benetti working for Fox, he was doing college football games. he was also doing baseball, but like in addition to the baseball, he was doing college football games for Fox. And as
Are
we
you
all
saying
know,
what I'm thinking?
I wonder if this turns into Jason Benetti potentially, because obviously Noah Eagle and Blackledge are doing the Sunday night, like the big primetime games. I wonder if this is an entryway for Benetti to maybe find himself doing Notre Dame football at some point.
Over under one football game we see from him this season.
I'll go over. I'll take
0.5. So you would take the one game. You think we're going to see him in the Notre Dame booth at some point this season?
I would not be shocked. And I would say, but and I know that there's like the connection with like Hannah Storm, and Dan Hicks is her husband, and Hannah is a Notre Dame alum, and like Dan Hicks has taken over that the last couple of years, and he's done a good job. I've said before that I think Hicks is an underrated play-by-play guy, but like between Eagle and Benetti, these are two of the younger, most up-and-coming guys in the business right now. And again, Benetti has already done college football for Fox. And I think that like if Benetti were to take over Notre Dame on a full-time basis, the Notre Dame home games on NBC, I think that like you probably got your best play-by-play guy since Tom Hammond. Like you've had, well, I'll reel that back because I forgot about TayCo being in there. But you've got one of the, like you would have a really good up-and-coming play-by-play guy in that seat. Let's just put it that way.
So it sounds like I will pencil him in for the Peacock game this season, and that'll be his trial run.
Okay.
Doesn't that seem like the perfect little...
I would be shocked if like within the next 2 to 3 years, he's not the Notre Dame football full-time play-by-play guy.
Ooh, I like your bold prediction. You don't usually do bold predictions.
Going out on a limb here. Okay, so but now the other part of this NBC baseball thing is NBC is not going to have a full-time analyst working with Benetti. Like they're not going to have their John Smoltz equivalent on a full-time basis. Yeah, I mean, it's like if you want to like take that literally, yeah, thank goodness for all of us. But instead, NBC is going to pair Benetti with different baseball analysts each week who are connected to the participating team. So, for example, like if it's Cubs and Mets, like you might have either Ron Darling representing the Mets and or Keith Hernandez or Jim DeShays for the Cubs in the booth, along with Benetti. And every week he'll travel around and do the national broadcast, but he's going to have an analyst who's connected to the team that he's doing in the booth with him. Do you buy or sell that move?
I buy this. I think this is a home run idea. He's basically kind of the traveling broadcastman. These other guys obviously don't have to, leave unless it's a road game, but they'd already be there with the team regardless, right? And so I think this is cool because I feel like oftentimes it's nice to get that national kind of media broadcast perspective of things. But then about halfway through the game, you're almost like, dude, just shut up. You don't know about the Cubs. You haven't been watching them for 100 straight games. You don't know the nuances or the ins and outs. You've watched a couple games and now you're just making some general observations, which I can appreciate. But when we're into the nitty gritty, you just don't understand the full dynamic of the team. And so I think having that person there to kind of fill the gaps there a little bit for Benetti is going to be really helpful for him and for the overall product at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think that's what NBC's obviously going outside, they're doing something a little bit different. They're outside the box on this by doing this instead of having, like a traditional team, like your Buck and Aikman, or again, like going back to Buck and Smoltz when they were doing it and, just having one team doing all these games. And because baseball is, like one of the reasons that I think that Sunday Night Baseball, like it had kind of faded on ESPN is it's like, what difference does the national broadcast make? Because people like you, people who are hardcore and in it every day, you're watching these games every day and you're used to, part of the reason that you have so much backlash once the playoffs roll around in terms of, Joe Buck hates my team or Smoltz hates my team. I do think Smoltz hates every team. So I think, we can all be unanimous on that. But
when you finish,
part of the reason you have so much pushback is because you're used to your guys calling the game. And then now you've got these national guys who are talking differently about your teams, and you perceive a lot of that as bias. So NBC is trying to kind of loop around that. And it's like, okay, we're going to have the local analyst doing the game with the national play-by-play guy, and maybe that eliminates some of that.
Yeah, and I that has to be kind of the perspective or the thought process. And again, this is why I'm really excited about the NBC product as a whole, because I like what they did with basketball. And when you hear stuff about this with baseball, I think they're going to have a really good product at the end of the day. There's one side note I wanted to make while we were kind of on the topic of broadcasters and you were talking about John Smoltz and all this good stuff. Can we just get rid of former MLB pitchers out of the booth? Like, I've been watching the World Baseball Classic, listening to Adam Wainwright. I don't know if it's just because he's a Cardinals guy or what, but it's like these pitchers seem to be more or less the duds in comparison. If you're going to give me a pitcher, the only guy I want on there is Pedro Martinez, because he'll at least have some fun with it. But it's like, I'm just so tired of these grumpy old John Smoltz, Adam Wainwright. Like, they were trying to make a joke out of, Wainwright's pitching performance during the World Baseball Classic, and he was taking it so seriously. And it's like, dude, just calm down a little bit. These pitchers are so disgruntled all the time.
I know. Get a little personality, like Pierzynski.
I like Pierzynski, and he's a White Sox guy.
I know. Exactly. At least the guy's got some personality, and that's what you need as much as anything. It's like, it's baseball.
Especially in
You're supposed to be having fun. Yeah. Like,
where people complain about having to watch a game on TV because of how long it takes. Like, the last thing you need is a grumpy old guy not having fun.
I know. And that's why I know a lot of people are opposed to 3-man booths, but I think baseball lends itself to a 3-man booth better than the other sports. Especially, it's like, if you're going to have these old grumps like Wainwright and Smoltz, at least have someone, like Pierzynski or somebody else who does have some personality, who can poke them a little bit and have some fun with it. Again, it's like that Ron Darling Hernandez booth along with Gary Cohen with the New York Mets. They have fun. They're able to go around it, so like, even though Darling was a pitcher and he's older than either Wainwright or Smoltz, like, you don't just hear him grumping all the time. Like, I don't get
I'm
it.
glad you agree. It's just grumping. It's like, this is baseball.
Yeah.
It's a World Baseball Classic. Like, let's have some fun here.
Exactly. Now, to the original point though, about these local guys doing the broadcast with Benetti on NBC every week, my one concern as a play-by-play guy would be, you're asking Benetti, who has not worked with any of these, probably a vast majority of these guys before, and now they're all just going to drop in with him, and they've got to act like they have some rapport, like how
Chemistry.
Chemistry, rapport. Yeah. Like Jim Nantz doesn't get the Tony Romo jokes 90% of the time. And so, like, who's to say, like, Benetti's got a good sense of humor, but so, like, who's to say that these analysts who are mostly going to be older than Benetti, like, who's to say they're going to get his jokes? You know what I mean? Like, you're trying to build chemistry on the fly. That would be the one concern that I would have with this as you're dropping this into a national broadcast each week.
Yeah, and I think it ultimately shows how much they value or how good of a skill set they believe Benetti has, that they can do something like this, where it's like, all right, we think you're good enough to just mesh with just about anyone. Just go drop in and work alongside these kind of hometown broadcasters. I wonder what that would be like. Do they get a little practice in the night before? Do they get there a little early the day of and do a little bit of back and forth, see how things are going?
Joe says, don't they watch film together before the game? No,
not in baseball either. It's just with how much every single day those broadcasters are working.
Yeah, and like, that's exactly it. Like, Jason Benetti is still doing the Detroit Tigers during the week. So, like, he's doing Tigers games all week long, and then on Sunday he'll show up in whatever ballpark, and then again, they're going to be having local analysts in the booth with him, and they're all going to be doing their own games during the week. They don't have time to sit and watch film, and like none of them watch film together. Let's put it that way. Like whatever film an analyst might be watching, like especially, like if it's Romo, for example, football or, whatever, it's like those guys are taking care of that on their own time at home. Like the play-by-play guy and the analyst.
Well, they also get
everyone's
like
doing their own preparation, and then they'll have a production meeting about, like whatever the high points are that they might hit during a game, but they don't have time for that kind of stuff to sit down and crunch film together. Were you going to add something?
No, I was just going to say, a lot of that information gets cut up and condensed for them. So by the time they're sitting down with it, it's almost like bullet pointed, like they're specifically looking at things. They're not sitting down and breaking down film from the beginning.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Boston College fired head coach Earl Grant after 5 seasons and a day after beating Notre Dame to end the regular season of the Fighting Irish.
I'm going to say concerning, because if Shrewsbury, and I know that I've really kind of heard it too since the end of the season, there's some grumblings about, Micah Shrewsbury and his relationships. Obviously those things get magnified when you're not playing well, but for a team like Boston College and how let's just say it, how bad they were this season, the fact that they come out and beat the Notre Dame team at the end of the season, and then their coach ends up getting fired, I think it's concerning for someone like Micah Shrewsbury. And I think that contract is 7 years, but I think that leash is a little bit shorter than that. Like if we're in year 5 for Shrewsbury and we're seeing a lot of these same things, I just don't know how if you're in Notre Dame's position, you continue to go much further.
Yeah, I mean, these are, there were 3 teams that didn't make it to the ACC tournament. Notre Dame, Boston College were 2 of them. Georgia Tech at the bottom of the conference as well. Those were the 3 teams. BC and Georgia Tech, both below Notre Dame, both fired their coaches. Now, those coaches had also been around a little bit longer because, again, for the Boston College coach, Earl Grant, it was 5 years. He had been around. He had a couple more years, but they were still at the bottom. I feel like one, BC is just a tough place to be in the, like any of the, like in the NIL rev share era. Boston College is just a tough job for either of the basketball programs or the football program. And the women's basketball program at Boston College also fired their head coach. But it is just not a good spot to be when you lose at the end of the year to a team that just that fired their head coach a day later. And I think, kind of as you alluded to there, the biggest difference for Shrewsbury is the fact that this was just year 3 for him. For Grant, it was year 5, so he did have longer. I just feel like I'm confident they're going to roll some resources into this for Notre Dame men's basketball, but we are now at the point where some progress has to be made next year. Like at least in the first 2 years, as bad as things went, they made it to the ACC tournament. Now, if Marcus Burton had played this year, I'm pretty confident that they're 2 or 3 wins, at least 2 or 3 wins better, and they're in the ACC tournament, but that's a pretty low bar. Like we have to see legit progress next year because it is just not a good sign when you lose to a coach who just got canned the next day.
I agree.
How about Notre Dame baseball? They took 2 out of 3 games from Duke over the weekend, their first ACC series, and they're feeling pretty good. I think right now they're 9-4 to start the season. What do you think the expectations should be for year 4 of the Sean Stifler era, Jesse? And I think we lost Jesse just as the show was beginning to wind down. He froze up. Are you there, Jesse?
I hope so. Can you hear me better now?
I can. Your screen froze there for a second. What should the expectations be for year 4 of the Stifler era for Notre Dame baseball?
Yeah, I think that it's crazy that we're already in year 4. Time really has flown by, especially since that College World Series appearance just a few years back. But I want to see Notre Dame in the top half of the ACC. I want to see them making a strong competition once the ACC tournament rolls around. But I think this is a team that should be fighting for a berth into the tournament by the time it's all said and done. I was a little bit weary of that expectation when I saw the start of the season, losing to FAU, losing to UCF, losing to LSU. But it seems like they've kind of
LSU can forgive. You can forgive.
Yeah, you can forgive. But it seems like they found some of that stability back. And I'm excited. It's not often that you see Notre Dame take the first ACC series of the season, especially against a program like Duke. And so, there's going to be some better teams in the ACC. I would like to, again, see them finish in the top half of the conference and be a team that is, honestly, kind of one of those, at worst, last teams left in the college baseball tournament.
And they are actually supposed to be playing Queens today down in North Carolina because this is spring break. And back in the day, spring break meant that Notre Dame baseball was going to travel someplace and they'd be playing for a week, whether it was in Texas or Florida or California sometimes. But, like in the more modern times with them being in the ACC, you don't stay away for a full week like that. But they are playing Queens right now in North Carolina, and they are tied at 1 in the top of the 3rd presently with Queens. So I'll be curious to see how that goes. But you talked about some better teams coming up. They're going to play Louisville next. That's coming up this weekend. So that's a pretty big series. They've got Clemson after that and North Carolina. So things are going to get a little bit tougher here, but it's at the very least good that they can open up on the road at Duke, taking 2 out of 3. And then, like you said, they lost to Florida Atlantic to start the season, and that was on opening night. It's like, oh boy, here we go. But then they took the next 2 games. So they swung it. And that's the biggest thing for Notre Dame baseball is just win a series. That's really in the ACC. If you win the majority of your series, you're going to be above 500 and you're going to find yourself in good shape in terms of a tournament resume at the end of the year. And so last year, my expectation, I think, was relatively low, where I said they at least need to be on the NCAA tournament bubble, and they kind of faded at the end. I think the expectation going into year 4 for Sean Stifler, where you are right now, is you need to be in the NCAA tournament in year 4. And there were a lot of preseason projections that I saw projecting Notre Dame going into the season to be in the NCAA tournament. So that's good. But I think that's it. Like they need to be in the tournament this year. I think that's my bottom of the line expectation for Notre Dame baseball.
Yeah, we've kind of, a lot of people talk about like that cycle as being like a fan. I think we've hit that cycle of the Notre Dame baseball program where it's not a program that you're expecting to go to the tournament every single season, but it's a program that can gear up and make a run every, 4 or 5 years. And then if history repeats itself, they make like a College World Series run every 20 to 25 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Like Joe, who is our resident Omaha native. He says he'd love to see Notre Dame in the College World Series. Well, we got that 4 years ago, and you had 20 years in between. I'm not setting College World Series as the expectation this year, but I think essentially if you look at this in 4-year cycles, I think it is you're at a minimum on the bubble for one of those 4 years. You are in the tournament for one of those 4 years, and then it's kind of a toss-up whatever happens in those other 2 years. So basically, if you're in the tournament every 4th year and at least fighting for a spot on the bubble in another year, I think that's a a fairly minimal standard for a Northern baseball program and a private school baseball program on top of that. But I think that that's kind of the expectation, and it is year 4 now. So honestly, I think it's tournament or bust, NCAA tournament or bust for Notre Dame this year.
You heard it here first.
All right. We've got Wake Up the Echoes coming up next. We're going to wrap it up with that. We will be back tomorrow. Jesse, enjoyed it as always. I will talk to you later.
Goodbye, my friends.
Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.